They laughed at the janitor. If you're so smart, fix it now. What I did changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started as an ordinary morning. The sun peeked through the grimy windows of Jefferson High, casting light on the unpolished floors. My heart raced as I pushed the mop against the tiles, the squeak echoing in the silence. I was just a janitor, but that day, I felt like I was standing at the edge of an abyss. Kids passed in and out, laughter ringing like chimes through the halls, but all I could hear was the thudding of my own heartbeat. They never noticed me. Not really. They saw a faded uniform, a nameless figure sweeping up their mess. But on that fateful day, that would change. A group of students stood gathered around the chemistry lab, the rivulets of bright blue liquid pooling under the door. Their excitement filled the air, thick with a sense of adventure. "If you're so smart, fix it now!" one of them shouted, pointing at the door. They laughed, the sound sharp as glass. My chest tightened, and I felt the waves of heat rush to my face. Who did they think I was? A joke? But there was something stirring inside me. I remembered the whispers I overheard while cleaning up. Brains and beakers, compounds and reactions. I had always listened closely, learning, absorbing every detail like a sponge. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a strange, electric spark of determination. There was chaos beyond that door. A science experiment gone wrong. Little did they know, this was where the mystery began. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The pungent smell of chemicals hit me. The sight was breathtaking. A blue fire flickered in a dish, bubbles foaming with wild energy. The laughter stopped. Eyes widened. I could feel their stares burning into my back. What would I do? Run? Call for help? But then I thought of my father's stories. The scientist in him had always dreamt big, and I wanted to make him proud. I took a step closer. My heart pounded like a drum as I reached for a nearby jar. Inside were gray and green crystals that sparkled ominously in the lab light. I didn't hesitate. I poured them into the bubbling concoction. The room erupted in a cloud of smoke, and the ground shook beneath my feet. Gasps filled the air. A booming noise followed. Silence fell. I was met with shocked expressions, both awe and fear written clearly across their faces. In that moment, I wasn't a janitor. I was a creator. But then, the blue flame flickered and dimmed, leaving a bitter aftertaste in the air. Confusion rippled among the students. "What did you do?" one whispered, and I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. And it hit me, a revelation as bright as the flash before the dark. What if this was just the beginning? What if my actions would spark something much greater? But I couldn't know yet. The principal's heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, and I heard the door swing shut behind me. "What is happening here?" His voice thundered, demanding answers. Would he laugh too? Would he see me as a nuisance again? Those questions hung like fog in the air as I stood frozen, caught in a heartbeat between the past and the future. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The principal's voice resonated through the lab, slashing through the tension like a knife. My initial surge of courage faltered as the gravity of the moment settled in. I could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up my neck. Those curious eyes, the students who once laughed at Menno, bore into me with something different: uncertainty, fear, and maybe, just maybe, respect. I looked down at my stained hands, the remnants of my hasty action lingering on my fingertips like a badge of honor. My voice caught, a mere whisper against the backdrop of chaos. The bubbles continued to hiss ominously, each pop a reminder of the unpredictability I had unleashed. I tried to fix it, I confessed, and a ripple of murmured conversations surged through the students. What were you thinking? The principal's frown deepened. His disappointment stung like a wasp's sting. You could have damaged the entire lab. I wanted to help, I murmured, desperation creeping into my tone. I felt the weight of their eyes, some flickering with a flicker of admiration, others shadowed with apprehension. A girl stepped forward, her challenge mingled with cautious curiosity. You did something. No one else stepped up. Why? My heart raced at the unexpected inquiry. Did they really want to know? I've always loved science, I admitted, my defenses fading. But no one ever saw me for anything other than a janitor. The truth hung heavily in the air, pulsing with raw emotion. The principal, still looming like a storm cloud, crossed his arms. And you think this reckless act proves your worth? You're playing with things you don't understand. A timid voice broke through the tension. But he fixed it, didn't he? It was a boy I recognized from the chemistry club, his glasses slipping down his nose. He fixed it when we just stood there. The mixed murmurs of agreement began to rise, the tide of opinions shifting like the bubbling solution before us.I. And that flicker of connection, something inside me ignited anew. Here was a crack, a tiny seam where hope shined through. I took a deep breath, feeling braver as I stepped forward. I might not have credentials, but I've learned a lot by listening. The world of science is fascinating. It's about trial and error, creation and destruction. I want to be part of that. The principal shook his head, frustration evident. This isn't a classroom. You need to respect boundaries. But even as he spoke, his voice softened with a hint of understanding. I could see him wavering, reluctantly acknowledging that perhaps, just perhaps, I was more than what my uniform suggested. As I left the lab, I was acutely aware of the lingering eyes of the students behind me. They were starting to see me in a new light, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. The hallway felt different, more vibrant, alive with potential. Yet, as I started to walk away, a weight settled in my chest. The excitement of the moment instead fractured into fragments of worry. What would this mean for me? What ramifications awaited after the principal's reprimand? The glow of their admiration dimmed under the shadow of doubt. Days passed, and I resumed my routines, yet this newfound spark lingered, lurking just beneath the surface. I had a small circle of VUCs, a few brave students who now looked to me for guidance, all of them eager to explore the questions of the universe deeper than they ever imagined. Each discussion I had with them filled me with optimism, igniting a longing within to venture further into the unknown realms of knowledge and creativity. One gray afternoon, as I was cleaning by the library, I overheard whispers among a small group of students huddled around a table. They were animated, their expressions flushed with excitement. I approached and paused just within earshot, catching snippets of their conversation. What if he taught us some after school? One girl suggested, her eyes aglow with possibility. Someone else replied, yeah. It'd be cool to learn things that aren't in the textbooks. He actually knows stuff. Their words sent a thrill through me, but doubt crept in. Could I really step into this role? An imposter amongst actual students? What if I failed them all? The thought clung heavily, like a weight anchoring me to the ground. Suddenly, a larger student I recognized turned abruptly and met my gaze. Hey! Why not, right? We could use someone who understands how things actually work instead of just formulas. The group fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. Their admiration, their hope, was palpable, and it fueled my heart. I flashed a tentative smile. I could come after school if that's what you want. Excitement surged through them as they clapped lightly, their voices a whirlwind of plans. Yet, deep inside, a sense of caution flickered like a faint candle. Was I truly ready to step beyond the confines of my modest role? As the days melted into one another, the whispers of future possibilities overshadowed my lingering self-doubt. But as I laid my head down each night, I couldn't shake the feeling something unseen brewed, threatening to challenge everything I knew. And just as I thought I could navigate this newfound path, an email notification pinged on my phone. It was from the school board. My breath hitched. The subject line read, "Regarding your employment." Panic fluttered through my veins like a startled bird trapped within. What would the board say? Would they agree with the principal, deeming my actions unfitting, reckless? The spark I once felt dulled in an instant, replaced with dread. Just then, the door slammed open. I looked up to see the principal's silhouette cast against the dim light of the hallway. His expression was grave. "We need to talk." In that moment, I knew everything I imagined, all the hope I was starting to build, hung precariously in the balance. The principal's stern gaze held mine, a silent challenge hanging heavily in the air. I stepped back instinctively, the weight of the impending conversation pressing down on me like a vice. I was all too aware of the whirlwind of emotions inside: fear, hope, and that insidious doubt that had crept back in, curling around my heart like ivy. "Come in," he gestured, his voice brokering no arguments. I followed him into his office, the stark walls echoing with an uncomfortable silence that thrummed with every hesitant step. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, the anticipation of confrontation gnawing at the edges of my resolve. He shut the door behind us, sealing me within the fortress of authority. "Your actions in the lab, while unconventional, cannot go unchecked," he began, his tone professional yet raw, as if he too struggled with the gravity of the situation. "I understand," I replied, my voice a ragged whisper. "I thought I was helping after I saw everyone just standing there while the experiment spiraled." "Help or not," he interjected, his hands tightening around the edge of his desk, "you meddled with materials and experiments you weren't qualified to handle. What if something went wrong? We are dealing with chemicals that can cause real harm." "But I didn't let it go that far," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my words. "I fixed it. I listened and applied what I knew." "Isn't that how science works, by experimenting?" The principal leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms and studying me with an intensity that felt like a spotlight in a darkened room. "And what if the school board sees it differently? You've drawn attention to yourself. Too much attention, I fear." His words struck me like a brick wall, halting the fervor that had been building within. Was this how my story would end? Content to serve coffee and clean floors, the unacknowledged janitor who dared to dream? I felt the shadows of self-doubt wrap around me tightly, squeezing out the light of hope I had fought so hard to embrace. But just as despair began to take root, I remembered the buzz of excitement from the students. Their aspirations had danced before me like flickering fireflies, illuminating the dark recesses of my insecurities. "They're excited to learn," I insisted, my voice gathering strength. "They want to break beyond the textbook, to see the world through the lens of experimentation. I can guide them. I've learned enough through years of observation." The principal's expression softened momentarily, a flicker of understanding marred by the shadows of his responsibilities. "It's not just about you, even if you're willing to take that risk. Think of the implications for the school if something were to go wrong. Are you prepared to bear that burden? Then let me show you," I blurted. "Let me teach them in a controlled environment, something safe. Supervised. They'll follow every protocol, I promise. I just want a chance to do something meaningful, to be someone they can turn to. Please." Silence enveloped us, the quiet so thick it hummed with unresolved tension. Finally he sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Listen, I will speak to the board, but know that your future here hangs delicately. You'll need to tread carefully. I can't guarantee anything. My heart quickened with gratitude and fear. "Thank you. I won't let you down. And I will be watching closely," he warned, a reminder of the precarious situation I stood on. With a slight nod I left his office, the weight of uncertainty riding along with me. In the days that followed, every morning I woke with determination, each step edging me closer to a precarious balance of hope and anxiety. The interest from those students was palpable, their eager faces igniting an undeniable spark within me. After school, we gathered, trading the rigid constraints of textbooks for the fluidity of inquiry and exploration. I showed them simple experiments, allowing their curiosity to guide us, and each laugh, each gasp of awe filled me with warmth. Yet, despite the joy, worry lurked insistently in the corners of my mind. They were trusting me, and the fear of failing them felt like a noose tightening around my neck. But I pushed that aside, choosing to embrace every moment, holding on to that transient joy like a lifeline as they bombarded me with questions and ideas. But then came the email. A single ping from my phone that held the power to shatter my world anew. My hands trembled as I read the words, a notification from the school board stating mandatory eligibility review. It felt like the ground beneath me swayed treacherously, as if the very foundation of the hope I'd built was fracturing. Just then, the classroom door swung open, and a student rushed in, their eyes wild with excitement. "You won't believe it! We've got a science fair coming up. We should enter together." But the weight of the email crashed down upon me, its shadow eclipsing my thoughts of fun and exploration. I don't know," I whispered, my heart torn between the exhilaration of their enthusiasm and the impending uncertainty. "Why not? This could be our chance to really show what we can do. We've learned so much already." Their exuberance chipped away at my fear, igniting a spark of motivation. But just as I felt myself begin to warm to the idea, a glance out the window revealed a storm brewing on the horizon, dark clouds gathering, ominous and foreboding. The principal's words echoed in my mind. "Tread carefully." There was a vast chasm between hope and reality, and I was teetering on the edge of both. As the first drops of rain began to trickle down the glass, I couldn't shake the feeling I had just taken my first step towards something transformative. But the shadows were lurking, watching, waiting for a moment of weakness to pounce. And amidst the storm closing in, I found myself standing on an unsettling precipice. Would I dare leap into the unknown with my students, or would I falter and let fear dictate my future? The path ahead was murky, and my fingers trembled against the screen of that damning email, a bittersweet moment echoing in the fragile balance of potential and peril that lay like a thin veil around me. The following days coalesced into a whirlwind, each moment a pendulum swinging between hope and fear. The excitement in the classroom over the science fair pulsed like a heartbeat, and I found myself caught in the rhythm of their enthusiasm. We dove deep into discussions, brainstorming ideas and pooling our collective curiosity. Each experiment was an embrace, a vessel of shared possibilities, and their laughter rang in the air like music. Yet, the weight of the email loomed heavily over my heart, an unwelcome specter whispering doubts into my ear, despite my best efforts to silence it. I stayed awake at nights, wrestling with the reality of the upcoming review. What if they deemed me unfit? With each passing moment, the fraying rope of my confidence hung perilously low. On a particularly gloomy afternoon, I noticed a student sitting apart from the group during our brainstorming session. Melanie was bright, full of potential, yet her eyes seemed clouded with worry. I approached her, placing my hand gently on her shoulder. "What's wrong?" She looked up, the shadows of her struggle close to the surface. "I'm not sure science is for me," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Everyone else seems to get it, but I feel lost. What if I mess this up?" A lump formed in my throat. Her fear mirrored my own. I knelt to her level, willing my gaze to encapsulate all the support I could muster. "Melanie, every scientist started somewhere. The beauty of discovery is in the failures. It's where we learn the most." I paused, trying to recall the spark that ignited my own passion. "You have every right to feel uncertain. Even I do. But together, we can climb this mountain, one step at a time." Her eyes flickered with something fragile, a small glimmer of hope buried beneath layers of anxiety. "Do you really think I can?" she asked, her vulnerability a poignant reminder of why I fought for this chance. "Yes," I whispered, fierceness sparking within me anew. "Every single one of us can. And I promise, I won't let you down." With a small, tentative smile, she nodded, and I felt the strength of our connection bolster my wavering spirit. Melting into the fabric of our shared struggles, grasped at the resilience I sought to cultivate in them. Yet, the relentless pull of uncertainty tugged at my heart. As the days passed, the classroom became a sanctuary filled with life, and Discover Me students, for all their diverse backgrounds, came together as a community not just of learners, but of dreamers. We crafted projects, fueled by their imaginations, brimming with potential. Their excitement tethered me back to the dream I once thought was lost, but every upbeat moment was shadowed by the review looming on the horizon. The principal, despite his initial promise of support, had grown quieter, leaving me to wonder whether the board's decision would be a crushing blow. With each passing day, their invisible disdain felt heavier than lead. One day, just as I was reorganizing supplies in the lab, I overheard snippets of conversation between a couple of teachers. "Did you hear what they're saying about that janitor?" one muttered, her voice laced with disdain. "It's an embarrassment, really, clinging to those kids' dreams. Science is a field for professionals, not someone like him." My heart sank, each word slicing deeper than the last. I clenched the tray I held, knuckles whitening. They didn't see the heart I poured into my work, or the ripple of inspiration I had ignited within my students. It was a heavy realization no matter what I did, prejudice would shadow me. That evening, crushed beneath the weight of the day, I was drawn to the school's dimly lit auditorium where students were setting up for an upcoming informational meeting. Their collective chatter draped warmly over me, wrapping me in a soft cocoon against the chill of doubt. They worked diligently, fixing chairs and arranging the stage, the air carrying the scent of fresh paint from the last-minute decorations. As I paused in the doorway, I caught sight of Melanie, her hands skillful and nimble as she decorated a trifold. Bored. Genuine laughter spilled from her lips as she exchanged playful banter with her classmates. Pride welled within me, a reminder of why I fought for my place. But then, a familiar uneasiness settled in as I spotted the principal enter the auditorium, his brow furrowed in what looked like concern. The students' laughter faded, replaced by an anticipatory hush that swept through the room like a chilling breeze. My stomach twisted as I made my way toward him, feeling the air crackle with unspoken tension. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my heart pounding against my ribcage. "I need to speak with you," he murmured, his voice low, urgency coloring his words. "It's about the review." There are murmurs of dissatisfaction among some board members. "They believe your position threatens the integrity of the program." Panic threaded through my veins, sharp and cold. "But they can't do that. I'm trying to help them." "Let's discuss this privately," he replied, but I could already sense the encroaching shadow on the horizon. In that moment, the laughter of the students seemed to dissolve into the darkness, and a sinking realization washed over me. I was losing grip on everything I had fought for. As the principal ushered me out of the room, one thing became clear: the delicate balance of hope was teetering precariously, and beneath it all, a storm was brewing. With each step I took away from the laughter and the joy I had found within those walls, I felt an impending dread that clutched at my chest, a bitter prophecy of everything I feared I would lose. Would I be strong enough to weather this storm on my own, or would the echoes of their laughter become nothing more than a memory fading into the encroaching night? As the principal led me away from the warmth of the students' laughter, the world around me shifted into an echoing void. My heart hammered against my ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. I could scarcely fathom the words he had just uttered. Murmurs of dissatisfaction, integrity of the program, each syllable struck like a discordant note in a familiar melody. Mr. Thompson, this isn't easy for me to convey, he began, his gaze averted, as if he was focused on a distant storm rather than the turmoil unfolding beside him. But there's pressure, lots of it. The board wants results, and they feel your methods, your connection with the students, isn't aligning with what they envisioned. I wanted to scream, to protest, to point out that connection was precisely the method they needed. But I'm the one who understands them. I know what inspires them. What they need isn't just a curriculum, it's the belief that someone cares. He stopped, his expressions shifting momentarily with a flicker of empathy. I know you care, but the board sees it differently. They don't believe you can maintain professionalism. The word hung between us, suffocating and cold, yet filled with an overwhelming absurdity. Here I was, embodying the essence of professionalism through dedication, and they were questioning it at my very core. Just give me a chance to prove myself, please. The words spilled out of me, raw and pleading. My students are thriving. They need me just as much as I need them. There was a long pause, his face marred with indecision. Then, he nodded stiffly. I'll advocate for you, but understand this: nothing is guaranteed. As I walked away, each step felt weighty, laden with the discrimination that clung to me like a second skin. I was a janitor, a placeholder in the eyes of others, mere collateral. Yet, wrapped around that very image was the unshakable truth: I believed in those children, in their potential. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the weight of the world pressed down harder than usual, robbing me of sleep. Mind racing, I gathered the fragments of uncertainty and hope, playing them over and over like a well-worn record. What if the board didn't see past my uniform? I was entrenched in their skepticism while desperately trying to unveil the brilliance of my students that I needed a plan, a way to display not just my dedication to the students, but my own worthiness. I tossed and turned until a sudden thought struck me like lightning. What if I showcased not only our projects but the process behind them? An event where creativity thrived, highlighting their successes in front of the board, a way to counteract their perceptions. The next morning, I reached out to Melanie, her bright spirit intertwined with an idea that felt less daunting when I shared it with her. "How would you feel about organizing a showcase?" I asked, invigorated by the potential it unlocked. Her eyes widened with excitement, and suddenly, the heaviness in my chest lifted. "A showcase? Of our projects? Yes. It would give everyone a chance to see how hard you and your classmates have worked," I replied, feeling my voice rise with enthusiasm. "We can invite the board, parents, and the community. They need to understand that science isn't just in a textbook, it's alive in you all." That very spark became infectious as I shared the idea with the whole class, watching their faces light up with the prospect of sharing their creations. Ideas bounced around the room like the electricity of a freshly ignited spark. Laughter echoed as they imagined their experiments, and with that, a glimmer of hope ignited in my heart as well. Days passed, and preparations unfolded. Melanie took charge of the decorations, her confidence blossoming with each passing moment, while others dove deep into refining their projects. I found myself swept up in their energy. Resilience flowed through our collective efforts. But that hope was soon muddied by storms of doubt that emerged within the shadows of our progress. Just before the showcase, Melanie hesitated while preparing her project. "What if it's not good enough? What if they don't take us seriously?" Kneeling beside her, I held her gaze. "Fear is normal, but it doesn't define you. Remember, you're not just presenting your project, you're showcasing your passion. That, above all, is what matters." But internally, I wrestled with my own fears. Would they truly see what we had built together, or was I setting my students up for more disappointment? The night of the showcase arrived, the auditorium buzzing with excitement mingled with anxiety. Dressed in their best, my students lined up with their projects, their faces radiant with a blend of nervousness and pride. I stood to the side, watching them soak up the applause, entranced by the energy in the air. But then, as the principal welcomed everyone and began to introduce the board members, I noted an air of discontent from the back row. Their eyes held skepticism, their posture exuded judgment. I felt my heart resettle into the familiar pit of apprehension. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present the brilliant minds of our school," he said, gesturing toward the students as they set their displays, beaming proudly. Each project demonstrated their hard work, some even provoking laughter from the crowd. But as the board members remained impassive, my pulse quickened again. Would they be able to see? The first few presentations went smoothly, and the students grew more confident by the moment. I couldn't help but bask in their triumphs, vicariously feeling their joy. Melanie stepped up, her project radiating enthusiasm, an infectious brilliance that grabbed the audience's attention. Yet my gaze darted back to the board members. No one sparkled with interest. Instead, their expressions grew increasingly severe. Halfway through, a board member raised her voice above the cheers. "This is all very charming, but do we really believe these children can be guided by someone with no formal qualifications?" My heart latched onto her words like a vice. Silence enveloped the room, stifling the merriment that had echoed just moments earlier. Gasps filled the air, and my students' faces fell, shadows creeping over the pride they had fought so hard to cultivate. Just as I stepped forward, ready to defend them, another member interjected. "Perhaps we should give him a chance to speak. Let's hear his side." Hesitation hung in the air as I grasped the opportunity. "Thank you," I managed, my voice steady despite the tempest raging within. "I may not have the title of a qualified educator, but I carry the passion of someone who believes in the brilliance of these students. They are not merely numbers or projects, they are the future, filled with potential." But the disdain didn't wane, Instead, it morphed into murmurs of disapproval, rippling through the audience. I felt the crushing weight of their judgments, different now, but equally suffocating. My heart raced, my mind flooded with doubt. Just then, Melanie stepped forward, her small figure trembling but her voice unwavering. "No, wait. I wanted to share something," she cried, turning to face the audience. "This isn't just about projects. It's about us believing in ourselves. I never thought I could, until Mr. Thompson helped me find my voice. Sometimes, all you need is someone who cares." As she spoke, I felt a warmth swell in my chest, but apprehension gnawed at my mind. Would they understand? Tension thickened, the energy in the room was taut, suspended in that moment of uncertainty. Just as I thought the despair would drown us, an unexpected figure surged forward from the back, a former student, now a young scientist, who had experienced my teaching firsthand. "I think we all need to remember who taught us to dream," she began, her voice cutting through the tension. And just like that, hope began to flicker anew, entwined with the thread of my own fears. Could this ripple effect truly stem from such heartfelt kindness? Would it change the tide in a moment that felt fraught with impending judgment? But then, as applause broke out, I noticed a dark cloud behind the board members, an expression of simmering contempt, and an incoming message popping on my phone. From a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, clutching the device tightly as curiosity mingled with dread. What if it contained news of a final decision? Would it cement our struggles with an inside voice that deemed me unworthy? Or perhaps, it could hold the unexpected kindness of someone willing to shed light amid the darkness. I glanced back at Melanie, whose spirit shone as she earned the room's applause, each clap stitching warmth into my heart. But that cool message lingered, a pulsing reminder of everything hanging in the balance. With a deep breath, I moved to check it, my pulse racing, anticipation gripping me once more. What awaited on the other side of that screen felt monumental. Would it unravel everything we had woven together, or stitch it into something resilient enough to withstand this storm? As the applause echoed through the auditorium, it felt surreal. My heart raced, caught in the whirlwind of Melanie's speech, the intervention of the former student, and the palpable tension radiating from the board members. But in that moment, my fingers trembled over the phone in my pocket, a harbinger of uncertainty amidst our small victory. With a fleeting smile toward Melanie, who basked in the audience's newfound appreciation, I slipped to the side of the stage, shielding my phone with my palm. My heart hammered in my ears as I pulled it out, the notification glaring with potential weight. My breath caught in my throat as I ventured to unlock the screen. Mr. Thompson, we need to talk, the message read tersely. The board is calling a special meeting to finalize your status. Be prepared. Cold dread cascaded down my spine. Was this the reckoning I had feared, an ultimatum cloaked in formal language? The momentary joy that filled the room began to dim. The gentle applause swelled in volume, swallowing my internal chaos as I remained frozen, enveloped in a storm of self-doubt and disappointment. Just as I wrestled with the gnawing despair clawing for dominance, a small hand slipped into mine. I looked down to find Melanie, her eyes glistening with relentless hope. "Did you hear? They loved my project," she exclaimed, beaming. Her joy felt like a beacon, illuminating the shadows clinging to my heart. "Yes, they did," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "You brought them magic tonight. But are you okay?" She pressed gently, concern etched on her delicate features. Biting my lip, I wrestled with the fear of burdening her young spirit with my worry. "Just thinking about how much we have ahead of us. We need to keep this momentum going." My voice faltered slightly, the affirmation of our gathering joy beginning to fracture under the weight of my inner turmoil. Mr. Thompson, she said, looking up with a determined light. "You really believe in us. Just keep doing that, and we'll prove we can do anything." Her confidence struck a chord, bolstering my own resolve, even as the undercurrents of dread pulsed within me. I nodded, squeezing her tiny hand, feeling the familiar warmth we had created together. "You're right. Together, we can take on anything." As we shared a moment of quiet understanding, I stole a glance back at the board members, their expressions unreadable as they conferred with one another, their judgment hanging like a dark cloud over our achievements. I needed to focus. I wouldn't let one message overshadow the triumph we had created as a community. The evening unfolded beautifully. Students paraded their projects, each more creative and inspiring than the last. But doubts lingered, whispering through the crackling air. Every laugh, every admiration was tinged with a reminder that this was only a temporary triumph, an ephemeral night glimmering against the larger backdrop of impending uncertainty. As the showcase dragged on, moments of delight were overshadowed by the ever-looming meeting. Discussions buzzed, punctuated by laughter and camaraderie, but every taunt from the back of my mind felt louder than any applause. When the last applause finally died down and the audience began to disperse, I knew I would have to face the board soon alone. When I finally drew Melanie aside, I saw the spark of hope flickering in her eyes. "What's next?" she queried, her enthusiasm undimmed. I took a deep breath, searching for a way to articulate the uncertainty stirring within me. "Well, keep building on this, but we need to prepare. We need to dig deeper and find ways to show them we matter together." Before she could respond, a familiar face broke through the wandering crowd. It was Mrs. Gardner, a longtime teacher with a reputation for advocating for students and teachers alike. She approached, her eyes gleaming with purpose. "Mr. Thompson!" She clasped my shoulder warmly, her voice a calm port in the tempest. "I just wanted to say how remarkable tonight was. You've ignited something in these kids, and that's worth defending. We can't let them close that door." I felt a rush of warmth, bolstered by her kind words. "Thank you, Mrs. Gardner. I wish I shared your confidence." I received a message from the board tonight. Her expression shifted, a look of concern knitting her brow. "They're not the voice of the students. You're the voice that matters, and these kids believe in you. Trust that." Before I could respond, Melanie tugged at my sleeve, her eyes ablaze with determination. "Can we give them something they can't deny? More projects, more everything? We need to show them what we can do." Just then, the clanging chime of a bell echoed through the hall, signaling the end of the showcase. Your heart raced as a knot of anxiety twisted tighter inside me, yet that spark of collective purpose ignited my own resolve. "Yes, let's do it," I agreed, clasping my hand around her shoulder, feeling the palpable energy that radiated among the students gathered around us. "Well, keep pushing forward, and I'll make sure everyone sees just how much you've grown." We spent the next hour brainstorming, each idea adding more layers to our burgeoning vision. There was laughter, collaboration, the seeds of hope flourishing amidst our fear. Then that message lingered, overshadowing our dreams. Would our future remain at the mercy of the board's decision? As the sky darkened outside, our thoughts began to crawl toward reality. Just then, I spotted the principal conversing with one of the board members, a tightening knot in my stomach unmistakable as I felt the adverse energy radiate off them. I turned back to Melanie and her classmates, who were now huddled together in animated discussion, innocent and vibrant. But the fear loomed larger, threatening to encase the raw essence of our community in shadows once more, and in that moment, I realized, we needed to prepare for the confrontation to come. We were not merely educators and students but warriors ready to fight for our right to exist as voices in this system. As the last remnants of applause faded into silence, I braced myself for the reality that awaited, the daylight dimming now as the truth stood poised on the horizon. What awaited tomorrow could make or break us all, and as the last errant chime echoed across the darkened classroom, I understood. Hope was a fragile flame that we would have to fan into a blaze in order to push back the encumbering shadows threatening to overtake us. As dawn broke over the school the next day, the heavy silence felt like an ominous prelude to the chaos about to unfold. I arrived early, each step echoing ominously across the empty hallways, every classroom still and silent. My heart drummed a cautious rhythm in my chest as I thought about the meeting, the board members' steely expressions haunting me like ghosts from the night before. I made my way to the teacher's lounge, the hum of machines brewing coffee a brief comfort. Sipping the steaming cup, I watched as teachers shuffled in, each wearing their battle gear of determination masked by anxiety. Mr. Callahan, the science teacher, caught my eye and offered an encouraging nod. "You did great last night," he said, though his voice barely masked the tremor beneath. "Thanks," I replied, the gratitude genuine but laced with uncertainty. But it may not matter if the board decides otherwise. He leaned against the counter, brow furrowed. We believe in you, Thompson. The kids need you, and they'll fight for you, but you must fight for them too. Believe me, I want to. I put my cup down, looking out the window at the empty parking lot. But is it enough? The question hung heavily between us, unspoken fear tightly clinging to each word. Mr. Callahan opened his mouth to answer, but the sudden arrival of students broke our conversation. As models of resilience, they marched in, chattering excitedly about the possibilities. Their energy pushed against the somber atmosphere enveloping me, reigniting the hope I'd tried to stoke the night before. I took a deep breath and walked among them, soaking in their laughter and spirited discussions. Melanie spotted me, her eyes sparkling with the kind of fervor that only children possess. Mr. Thompson, we have a plan. She tugged at my sleeve, her enthusiasm contagious. What is it? I asked, smiling despite the weight on my chest. She rallied her classmates, each presenting their own ideas like a collection of fireworks. They spoke of projects that could reach broader audiences, of performances and showcases that would demand the board's attention. Well, have a community event. Invite the parents, the town, everyone, she exclaimed, a note of defiance lighting her voice. Make them see how important we are. Another student chimed in, fists clenched in determination. As their ideas flew through the air, I felt the tension within myself ease slightly. It was proof their belief in our collective mission reaffirmed my own resolve. This is brilliant, I praised, unable to hide the pride swelling within me. If we'll show them the full scope of who we are, they won't have a choice but to pay attention. But as I cheered their creative impulses, a familiar darkness crept back in, the worry simmering beneath the surface like a storm gathering on the horizon. The day dragged on sluggishly, punctuated by moments of quiet planning intertwined with urgent whispers of anxiety amongst teachers and glances of concern shared through huddled conversations. Finally, at 2 p.m., I received the foreboding email alerting me that the board meeting was set for 4 o'clock that same day. The weight of impending judgment settled like lead in my stomach. I was running against the clock, and the potential of what I had to face started to feel insurmountable. I gathered the students together, their energy unwavering despite my internal turmoil. As we placed final touches on our community event plans, I found solace in their passion and purpose. They were the lifeblood of everything I envisioned for this place, and I felt that with them at my side, we could fight. Let's prepare a presentation, I declared, my voice gaining strength. Something that showcases your ideas, your talent, everything we've built together. The students' excitement was palpable. We spent the next hour piecing together a presentation that would highlight their innovation and creativity, a showcase of who they were and how much they mattered. As the clock ticked closer to 4, the air grew dense with anticipation and dread, but also hope. As I prepared to make my way to the boardroom, Melanie stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. You'll be amazing, Mr. Thompson. Just remember, they can't deny us when we stand as one. Lacing my fingers with hers, I nodded, allowing her fierce belief and determination to sink into my bones. I needed all the courage I could muster as I stepped into the meeting room. The board members sat around a large table, their expressions grave, like judges ready to hand down a sentence. I took a steadying breath, feeling the warmth of the students' support echo within me. Thank you all for gathering, I began, feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins. But just as I spoke, the door swung open, and in walked a stranger, a man in a crisp suit, carrying an air of authority that chilled me. Excuse my late arrival, he said with an all-business demeanor. I'm here from the district office. I've been assigned to observe today's meeting regarding Mr. Thompson's status. A ripple of confusion and concern passed through the board members, but my heart sank even deeper. An unknown presence coupled with the fortitude of the impending verdict felt like the perfect storm gathering strength. Suddenly, I felt vulnerability crash in waves as I realized the gravity of what was about to unfold me. Hopes hung by a thread, poised precariously on this board, and the words that were still unspoken. And as I stood there, staring into an uncertain future surrounded by those who held our fates in their hands, all I could hear reverberating in my mind was Melanie's voice, They can't deny us when we stand as one. But would they? Would this stranger tip the scales against us when the moment of truth finally arrived? As the door clicked shut, sealing the stranger into the meeting room, an icy anticipation flooded the air, turning the atmosphere electric. My heart raced, a visceral reminder of everything that was on the line. The board members exchanged anxious glances, their earlier resolve seemingly muddied by this unexpected complication. "Mr. Thompson," the stranger said, his eyes pinning me to the spot. "With your reputation preceding you, I'm curious how you plan to turn this around in such a short span." His tone dripped with skepticism, and my stomach twisted in response that I cleared my throat, taking a step towards the table where the board was seated. "We've championed a community event to showcase our students' talents and creativity. They've worked incredibly hard, and this is their opportunity to demonstrate their value to the community, and in turn, the board." "Let's cut to the chase," the man interjected, leaning forward slightly. "Do you genuinely believe this presentation is enough to change the board's decision? What if it falls flat?" The tension coiled tightly within me, barely masked under layers of my determination. "It won't," I asserted, surprising even myself with the fierceness in my own voice. "With the support of my students and community, we can show that we are more than just numbers on a ledger. What's at stake here is more than my career, it's about the potential of these kids." The board members shifted uneasily in their chairs. I could see the fleeting glances of doubt reflected in their eyes, but I held my ground. I needed taught. Her reliance on me was palpable, even in this moment of uncertainty. "Very well," the man replied, mischief flickering in his eyes. "Let's see what you've got, Mr. Thompson." I gestured for my students to take their places. The air buzzed with their energy, each eager to present their hard work. Melanie stood front and center, her confidence unwavering. As they began to showcase their ideas, bold art projects, stirring theatrical performances, and innovative tech solutions, hope radiated off them like the warm glow of sunlight spilling through a window. But just as the presentations reached their peak, the stranger piped up again. "Impressive, but all of this boils down to funding, doesn't it? How do you propose to generate the necessary money? Events like these rarely yield the expected returns." At that moment, a shadow flickered across the students' faces, slicing through the hope I'd felt moments ago. A low murmur rippled through the room, uncertainty surfacing as they exchanged wary glances. "This isn't a money-driven agenda," I shot back, inadvertently taking the reins of my own emotions. "This is about engagement. This is about creating a community that supports its kids wholeheartedly." Melanie stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mr. Thompson thinks we're worth the investment. And if you won't support us, that says more about you than it does us." Her courage fueled a fierce determination within me, a precious connection to the idealism of youth. The board members shifted again, this time their expressions slowly morphing from skepticism into contemplation. But before they could voice any concerns, the stranger interrupted with a chilling reminder. "Let me remind you, decisions about funding have to be justified, and the stakes are high. You're betting not just on your presentation but on the faith of those who won't be in this room." His words landed heavily, each syllable pinning me down with a sense of impending doom. I searched for the right moment to respond, the right words to convince not just the board but more importantly me students who were watching this unfold with wide-eyed hope. Suddenly, one of the students, Chris, a quiet yet immensely talented artist, stood up. With trembling hands, he pulled a sketch from his folder. "When I first came to this school, I didn't think anyone cared about what I had to say. I didn't think my art mattered," he confessed, his voice shaking but resolute. "But Mr. Thompson showed me it did. Do you think that just because you don't see what we do here, it's not valuable? We're part of this community. And we're worth fighting for." A ripple of emotion cascaded through the assembly, even the board members appearing impacted, their steely facades cracking just a fraction. But then the stranger leaned back, smirking, as if savoring a hidden delight in our struggle. "Touching sentiments, but the reality is," he didn't finish his sentence. Instead, the fire alarm blared through the room, the wailing sound digging into our very essence. Confusion erupted as board members stood in a flurry. Someone shouted for everyone to evacuate, and chaos became the immediate rule of the day. We spilled into the hallways, the students clutching each other closely, uncertainty simmering underfoot as we shuffled outside. I felt Melanie grip my hand tightly. Her grip was warm but laced with anxiety. Once outside, we gathered in front of the building, the distant sounds of the alarm deafening. Students exchanged nervous chatter in a swirling cloud of worry. It was only then I noticed a fire truck pulling into the driveway, sirens wailing, and my heart sank once again. What if this was the distraction that changed everything? There was a deep pit forming in my stomach as I glanced around, watching kids hold their breath amidst the chaos. Would this alter our chances? As the fire chief approached, scanning the scene with a sharp eye, I felt a tightening knot in my chest. And in that fraught moment, as uncertainty hovered ominously overhead, I heard a startling announcement from the fire chief's radio, a report of flames being spotted close to the school property. A chill swept through me. Was this mere coincidence, or was there something deeper at play? Everything I had fought for, me students' futures, the love we had created within our school, hung in the balance, now overshadowed by flames. And just like that, my heart sank once more into a void of dread and disbelief. The cold bite of fear seeped into our group as the fire chief issued urgent commands, redirecting students away from the building and instructing them to stand clear. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, drowning out the chaos that surrounded us. The sight of fire licking at the edges of the school property was a nightmare made real, and yet, it felt almost unreal, like I was watching it all unfold in a film rather than in my actual life. Melanie's fingers tightened around mine, her knuckles pale. "What's going to happen to the event, Mr. Thompson?" she whispered, her voice trembling as trepidation clouded her eyes. "Don't know yet," I managed, forcing my voice to sound steady, even as the truth clawed at my insides. The fire alarm had served as an interruption of epic proportions, but could we still recover? My mind raced with contingencies, but the thought of the flames getting closer froze my words on my tongue. As we watched the fire crews spread out, assessing the situation, I felt a rush of warmth as Chris stepped closer. His eyes, usually filled with so much doubt, now sparkled with determination. "If we can showcase what we've been preparing for, maybe we can get the community to rally around us," he urged. "Don't let this be the end." I glanced at him, surprise mingling with admiration. "You really think the board will come around after this? Why not? It's a chance to show them how strong we are together, how we can overcome anything, even in actual fire," Chris replied firmly, the ember of hope igniting within me once more, however faint. As chaos continued to churn, students murmuring together, parents rushing in, tearful reunions occurring on all sides, a flicker of resolve began to grow in me. Chris was right. If we could harness this disaster, we might still draw attention to our cause and garner the support we so desperately needed. But how could we transform this moment of crisis into an opportunity? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the throng of parents and onlookers. It was Mrs. Grenfield, the beloved history teacher, and she moved with purpose towards us, her brows knitted together in concern. "My dear students, what's going on? Is everyone all right?" I stepped forward, my voice rising above the turmoil. "There's a fire near the property. We need to stay clear for now." Her eyes widened, but they were quickly filled with a fierce light. "Then let's do something. We can't let this be the last memory for our kids. Let's gather everyone and show the board that we won't let a little fire extinguish our spirit." With a determined nod, I watched as Mrs. Grenfield rounded up fellow teachers and parents, rallying them into action. She had always been the heart of our school, and in that moment, her energy electrified the air. It was contagious. "Let's gather supplies, art materials, posters, anything we can use to convey that the community stands behind these kids," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We will show them what our school means to us." As students and parents began organizing into groups, I felt the tide shifting. I turned to Melanie and Chris, each of them now plastered with determination. "You're both right. Let's make the most of this. We need to prepare statements, artwork, anything to express who we are." Every second felt like a precious drop in an hourglass. The threat of flames loomed behind us, but amidst the growing storm of uncertainty, I sensed a flicker of possibility. Students began to grab markers from backpacks, paper torn from these desperate moments of chaos. Compelled to act, they sketched feverishly, their youthful passions spilling onto each canvas, each poster reflecting not just their art but their collective voices. But just as creativity flourished, a figure approached from the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. It was the stranger from the board, the one who had sown doubt during our presentations. I felt the tension quivering through the air as he stopped a few feet away, surveying the scene with sharp eyes, the smirk now replaced with something more severe. Thought you'd distract us with theatrics, did you? Chaos does not equate to progress, he noted, his voice a low rumble as he crossed his arms. Enough! I shouted, the heat of anger surging through me. If you think a disaster will erase the value of these kids' work, then you really are missing the point. They are capable of rising above this. For a moment, he simply regarded me, his demeanor suddenly contemplative. Was there a crack in his arrogance, an ember of understanding? I hoped for more than just the walls of indifference he built, but as quickly as it came, the moment fizzled away, replaced by a hasty dismissal. Well, see how you fare, Mr. Thompson. You're betting your future on this chaos, he retorted coldly, before striding away, leaving a hard knot in my stomach as apprehension swept through me anew. As the fire engine roared to life, sirens blaring, I gazed at the students around me, their faces painted with both determination and fear. The flames were a reminder of what was at stake, an urgent call to rise up against the odds. But as we began to craft our message of resilience, one moment stood out. Chris turned to me, eyes wide with inspiration. What if we share our stories too? Not just art, but each of our paths. There's power in our words. Just then, a sharp scream pierced the air, a loud, hollow sound that echoed through the crowd. Instinctively, I turned to see a plume of dark smoke rising from behind the school, a sight that set everyone on edge. As dread washed over the students, I felt the stakes escalate. This wasn't just about proving ourselves anymore, it had escalated to something much larger. Would we lose everything we had fought for? The emotion surged through me once more, a swell of determination rising as I faced the chaos surrounding us. I needed to step up. And then, in the heart of the storm, beneath the sprawling shadows cast by anxiety, I found myself standing on the cusp of something monumental, a message that was yet to be discovered. But the next heartbeat changed everything. Where the path ahead was a blur, a flicker of light sparked anew. Suddenly, I heard frantic shouts amongst the onlookers, and my heart lurched as someone pointed towards the building. I followed the line of sight and froze. There, moving through the shadows, a familiar figure caught my eye. The realization struck like a thunderbolt. It couldn't be possible. It was my father, the man who had shaped me into the dreamer I was. He stood there in his old lab coat, now tattered and stained but still carrying an essence of something vibrant. I blinked, wondering if my mind was playing tricks on me, but there he was, moving with purpose through the scattered crowd of students and teachers, urgency etched deeply into his features. "Dad!" I yelled, my heart sky high, a rush of disbelief and joy flooding through me. Time seemed to slow, and every moment cascaded back, memories swirling with the tumult of emotions. I dashed towards him, pushing through the dense throng. The warmth of his presence anchored me amidst the chaos. He turned at the sound of my voice, meeting my gaze with his stormy blue eyes. "I heard about the fire," he said, breathless, concern replacing his initial joy. "I had to come. I didn't think you'd be out here. Is everyone okay?" I asked, realizing I was a breath away from sobbing. "There's so much at stake," and he cut me off, a shadow of fierce determination crossing his expression. "I know you're doing something great here. I saw it even before you did. You've always had it in you, son." Just then, there was a commotion among my students. They were rallying together, holding the projects they had spent countless hours pouring their hearts into. Melanie stood front and center, her small frame representing a collective strength that sang out to the community. "Mr. Thompson, we need to show what we've worked for. We can't let them see us back down." Swallowing my nerves, I felt my father's reassuring presence solidify my resolve. "She's right," I proclaimed, raising my voice to be heard above the cacophony. Our stories, our projects, everything we've built together need to shine through this smoke. If we can show the community who we are, we can find a way to be seen. The students rallied behind me, a chorus of agreement ringing in the air. The boards, once looming and oppressive, felt lighter as we moved forward together. As we raised the projects high, the flames seemed to retreat slightly, the wind shifting as if to clear our pathway. My father stood beside me, his pride shining like a beacon. "You don't have to do this alone," he said firmly. "This is your community, just like it was mine. They need to know what happens when passion meets purpose." Together we turned to face the board members, our resolute clan organized behind us. The burning flames of uncertainty became vibrant embers in our lives, igniting a fire that would drive our message forward. We spoke in unison, our stories entwined, reflecting the determination we all shared. I felt the heat cling to my bones, a metaphor not only for the literal fire they'd faced but for every obstacle we had overcome together. The stranger from the board reappeared, arms crossed, his unease palpable amidst our fervor. But my students didn't waver. They stood unwavering in their dreams, and in their desire for expression. "We can do this," Melanie repeated, her voice steady among the flames surrounding us. "We're worth so much more than they believe." In that moment, a ripple of recognition swept through the adults, and I could see it reflected in their eyes, a light of possibility illuminating the path before us. The fire within our spirits burned brighter than any flame threatening to consume us. Just as tears began to well in my eyes, realigning the vision of resilience I craved from the beginning, a loud cheer erupted among the students. They defended their aspirations, spoke their truths, and refused to be silenced any longer. It was a profound acknowledgement, one I had never encountered in my own educational experience. And as the fire chief announced the impending containment of the flames, bringing an assuring wave of relief, I felt the full weight of the moment. We had indeed transformed chaos into something beautiful, together as individuals, united as a community and a family. In the aftermath of the event, the board members stood reconsidering words of action, driven by the force of hope we displayed. But amidst the dread, I learned the truest lesson of all. It was never about proving my worth, it was about lifting others. Later that night, when the sky blasted with stars, I stood in the now quiet auditorium, memories flooding my heart. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, and we shared a smile, unbroken by moments of doubt and bound by the unyielding belief in the bonds we had formed. I didn't know what decisions the board members would make, but standing there surrounded by those I had learned from, cared for, and believed in, I understood that perhaps life isn't just about the grand triumphs but the unyielding spirit that binds us through struggle. As I stood before my students, who watched the horizon of potential unfold before them, I found my voice again. No matter what comes next, remember the flame that fuels our passion cannot be extinguished. We rise together, always. And just as the stars twinkled high above, illuminating our paths ahead, I embraced the power of the relentless journey we share, the hope unwavering within our hearts, always shining through the darkness. In that moment, I realized, we were no longer just a janitor and his students. We were rebels ignited by passion, voices bound by purpose, and together we had extinguished the flames of doubt, lighting a beacon of resilience that would forever guide us.